So on that note, let me introduce you to the two women that will be interviewing tonight. First off, Heather Wall is a DJ and presenter for Nettle Radio. Her regular show is at 11 a.m. on Monday, should you wish to tune in. She's been DJing for over 10 years, from clubs in the city to weddings. She's even ran her own night in Manchester, and she has DJed as part of the Dimensions Festival DJ Directory. I think you'll agree that all of that experience has meant that she has brought some very good vibes to this evening so far, and we look forward to more a bit later. Apart from being a DJ, she's also an assistant producer for Radio 2, Radio 3, and my personal favourite, Radio 4, of course. And tonight we'll be focusing mostly on her DJing and presenting work, and she'll be talking about some of her views that are not representative of the BBC. So, please welcome to the stage, Heather Wall. And our second guest tonight is Swarzy Macaly, is a host at Kiss FM UK, and joined Kiss after winning the Kiss Chosen One competition in 2016. Her show, Kiss Fresh, is on every Saturday and Sunday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m, should you wish to tune into that. She's also presented for Dice FM, and if you are a podcast listener, you will probably have heard her voice before, because she is one of the voices for BBC Sounds, which I discovered listening to my Melvin Bragg podcast whilst at the gym. Thanks. Aside from presenting, Swarzy also explores conversations about our society through spoken word performances, and is also heavily involved in volunteer work for the Grenfell Tower relief effort. So we'll be hearing a bit more about that later. But please, with me, welcome Swarzy to the stage. Now, guys, let me offer you some drinks. You have one choice, okay, and it's still water. So I hope you're happy with that. And as I pour you, I just want to really get into the issues that exist in our society by asking you a very serious question, which is, Swarzy, I know that you have interviewed Craig David, and I know, Heather, that you have featured Craig David in some of your mixes. And just the question that is burning everyone's minds right now is, which is the greatest what's his name? Craig David, yeah. What is the greatest Craig David track ever? Swarzy, what are you?
I think my greatest Craig David track, it has to be Fill Me In, man. Like karaoke nights. Thank you, Gabs. Gabs is agreeing with me. Fill me in. You know what? Narrative. My brother clocked narrative. He took a girl and she got in trouble with her parents because she left her money for the cab on the TV. The red wine bottle was gone. Yeah, you know what? Fill Me In is the greatest Craig David track.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually throw that out to the audience and say, how do we feel about that? Okay, Fill Me In. Like, just give a kind of murmur if you're with one. Okay.
Tough crowd.
Okay. Wow, okay, it's going to be a long evening. Heather, let's come to you.
So I think mine has that narrative as well, but I would say 7 Days, but the Sunship remix.
Yes. Yeah, there are... Oh!
Fill Me In. But 7 Days, the Sunship remix is a bit faster, isn't it? So you can kind of dance to it, whereas Fill Me In is a little bit more of a listen in the car.
Yeah, it's just a throwback, really, isn't it? Good Craig David
Well,
track.
it is for some people. We were just talking before we came up that there are some people at school discos who would dance to Craig David tracks, and I was not one of those people. I was more of a kind of Grease soundtrack kind of person, which I know is a bit sad, but there we go. Heather, let's talk about you're working in the creative industries, but has that always been obvious that is something that you would go into? Were you a creative kid? Was it very obvious that you were going to go into something that was creative later in life? Or?
Yeah, I think... Is this on? Yeah, oh, right, sorry. Like the sound of my own voice too much. Yes, I think so, because I loved music. I always loved music. Actually, I remember making my own radio show when I was about 10. And
what was that called?
Well, I'd probably the Heather Wall show. And for some reason, I wanted to interview Prince Charles. So I did this thing where I got my friend to come over and she pretended to be Prince Charles. I don't know what we talked about. And I recorded it.
Was she convincing?
I don't know. I can't remember. But yeah, and we recorded it on this little tape recorder I had that my parents had bought me, a little plastic one, you know, bright colours. So I think so.
And were you around music as a kid? Or?
I was, yeah. I played loads of different instruments, and I think the first instrument was the recorder, and I was so keen to be in a band that I asked which band I could join, and there weren't any, but they said, if you want, we can make a first recorder role for you in the orchestra. So I became first and only recorder in the orchestra, but I was so pleased.
I'm sure you played the recorder beautifully. Swarzy, were you a creative kid? Was it very obvious from an early age that you wanted to go and do something creative?
Well, you know, I'm a big Aladdin fan, and as a kid, I've got a cousin called Dom. We've both got brothers, so obviously I was Aladdin, Dom was Jasmine, and our brothers were Abu and Jafar most of the time. So the creativity really started off young. But no, growing up, do you know what? We just used to tell great stories. Our family are a wealth of storytellers, and so creative narrative and writing was my thing. I used to love to write, love to do poetry. But I didn't know as a kid that could be a job or anything. I just really loved telling stories.
And what's your favourite track from Aladdin?
You see what, yeah? Disney has been on the social media page because people are sleeping on Aladdin. Aladdin, Friend Like Me with Robin Williams.
Yes.
That is,
yes,
no. come on, guys. The guys are talking, but really, a whole new world as well. It's got a couple tunes, Aladdin.
My favourite... Loving it. He's loving it. Jafar is a good character in Aladdin.
He's evil. He's great.
And his interactions with Iago are very...
Yeah.
They made me laugh a lot as a kid, yeah. And then, growing up, storytelling, narrative important to your family, how does that develop into what you do now? How did you actually break into the world of media? Yeah,
so I won a competition called the Kiss Chosen One. I'm the last chosen one, I think I am. So shouts go to the... yeah, I do feel like, you know, Matrix is upon me right now. So basically, my boyfriend said to me, you should go and interview the candidates in the queue as if you're already a Kiss FM presenter. And I was like, oh, you're so savage. That is so bad to do. But there we were. We rocked up with the camera. And I was saying, you know, why do you think, you know, what things of my personality do you think you really need to be a Kiss presenter? Because you needed to submit a show reel. So I didn't really take it seriously, to be honest. I didn't think I've got no background in radio. I have not studied radio. I don't even know what a studio looks like. And I went in with Andy Roberts. He's the head of KISS. And I genuinely believe it was my dab that got me through to the head of the queue. And there I was with a little script and giving gifts and all sorts. And then they called me up to say, you've made the top 10, the top 20 academy. And I said, they've got the wrong girl because I've just been winging it all this time. So I made the top 5. And then in October 2016, I got the call to say, yep, you're the latest KISS Chosen One presenter, and you start in January. And I was like, oh my gosh. So, did not get into radio the conventional way at all. Absolutely went for it. And 3 years later, I've got the breakfast show on a Saturday morning. So we give thanks.
So is the message from that, try and wing it? And
the message is enter competitions and win them. Like,
okay.
Get jobs.
Great, okay. Heather, you've been part of the circuit for 10 years now. Was there a moment when you thought, I am now a DJ? Like, I've now arrived, I'm now a creative person?
Upstairs, 20 minutes ago. That was it. That was the moment. No, there are loads of great times where I think this is why I love doing it, including, being outside in Clerkenwell, playing nice tunes, Sometimes I've DJ'd, there was a festival I DJ'd a few years ago that's really small called Brainchild, some people over here might have been, and it was raining and people were just dancing through the rain and loving the whole thing, and there are just little kind of pockets of moments where that feels really special. But has there been a moment where I've thought, oh yeah, this is it? No, not yet.
Okay. When did you start calling yourself DJ Heather Wall? When's the point of crossover, right? So, could I just start calling myself DJ Peter Sinclair? Is that an inappropriate thing to do?
This is kind of how my thoughts worked. So I thought I need to come up with some kind of cool DJ name. And a DJ that I really like is Giles Peterson. And I thought, well, if he can call himself by his first names, I'm just going to do that too. Also, I couldn't think of anything that sounded really cool and not cheesy. And actually, thinking about it now, a lot of them sound a bit weird. You just have to roll with it. But I didn't have the confidence maybe just to do that.
And for both of you, what has been just so maybe dancing in the rain, people dancing in the rain to the music that you've kind of compiled. But are there any other moments that you just think that was what it was? That is what it is about. That's just the best moment so far on radio or DJing. What's been the kind of highlight so far? Do you think?
Highlights so far, I think, so outside of radio, I also present events and do a similar thing to what you're doing now, hosting conversations. And I love events because they're so spontaneous. You don't quite know where the conversation is going to go. And I think for me, it became very apparent as a host where you sometimes have to let go of the questions that you've prepped and really listen in to who you're talking to. And if they want to linger on question 2 and then the audience catch a vibe and then everyone's, who cares about question number 7? You have to stick with where the narrative is going. And on radio, you do get to do that. You do get callers calling in, or you might get a wild competition you have to do. And so I think some of my it moments have been, you know what, we were flying at that point. We were freestyling. There was no script. And I think sometimes that is a good indication that as a host or as a presenter, you can trust your audience and you can also trust the people on stage.
Okay, that's exciting. Are you trying to tell me something about my...
Yeah, freestyle, man, just freestyle.
Question 7's coming up, and I'm really nervous. Heather, best moment for you, apart from watching the people dance in the rain?
This is difficult. There was a very special moment where it was the biggest club night that I'd done in Manchester. I'd booked a really good club that was well respected. I'd got some really great DJs, and that was really special. But it was the last night I put on because I'd asked my grandmother to be an investor and give me some money for it. And I lost a couple of £100 of my grandmother's money. Oh, no. And so while that was very special, that was the last night that I put on.
Okay. So you're both working in presenting and DJing. What skills does it take to be just a creative in general, and maybe more specifically a woman in that area? What skills have you had to kind of deploy in, so like the responsiveness, right, of being in a live situation where someone is telling you something and it's listening and it's all the kind of like great interaction. What other skills do you need to kind of like just make it in media?
So I think the skill of listening, sometimes we don't know what to say next because we haven't heard what the person may have just said. Right. And so often you try to deconstruct, so my background really to presenting wasn't that I just rolled into radio. I started going to a youth group which turned out to be a church, and on a Monday night we used to do a drama group. So the drama group would split into 2, and you'd get a bit of the Bible and you'd have to animate it. You'd have to make a drama within half an hour, and if your drama group won, you got to perform it on the Friday at the youth group. So obviously it was really competitive. I wanted to be the winning team, whatever happened. But really, when it came down to Friday, people were sick, people didn't know what to do, so you were always filling in. And I think the job of thinking on your feet was something that I'd learned at a very young age, and just going up and improvising and making jokes if someone didn't get the joke and all of that, really, I think, just put me in a really good position now where people are training to do that. But I think if you can listen well, then you can fill in the gaps, and then there aren't to be any awkward silences because the person who you're sitting with feels loved because you've listened to them. And so the best thing about having those conversations and thinking on your feet is that spontaneous reaction of, you actually understood what I said there, and therefore the conversation holds much more value than anyone coming in. Because the truth is, the Sun, the Daily Mirror, the Guardian, all of those people will do a review, whether it be music or something else. But really, you want to get the headline that no one else will get, and I think that comes through listening.
And that's a really great skill, just for it not just being in a creative position, but just in life in general. Yeah. Things just work when you're actually listening to people. Speaking to actor friends of mine, that is a very kind of key aspect of their work as well. Heather, what about you? Key skills that you've picked up along the way?
I think one of them is probably being adaptable to certain situations, because sometimes you might be asked to do something last minute. Actually, I remember one of my first DJ sets at a festival that I played at quite a bit. They just asked me 2 days before, and for some reason, I think I brought, at the time we were using CDJs most of the time, so making CDs. Actually, that's what I was doing today. I've still got all the CDs that I made when I was a lot younger, and I still use them all the time. So I think I'd brought my CDs optimistically thinking that someone might ask me to DJ that weekend, and so I did, and that was brilliant. And there have been other things in my day job as well, where someone says, oh, can you just do this? And you just have to say yes, and then actually figure out some of the detail later.
And key challenges as you go out into the world of creative media, like what are some of the things that you're coming up against, that your adaptability, that your listening skills are having to be deployed against? Key challenges that you think you've faced.
I think key challenges for me is being assertive. Especially as a presenter, you're a freelance. So I'm not. Someone said to me today, "What do you do when you're not on the radio and you're doing a whole world of other things? You're at events or you're." Hosting something here, there, and everywhere. And so to be assertive and say, what do you want from me? Because when I come, I will be the host and the presenter, but you need to tell me what you want. And sometimes that can come across quite diva-ish, because people say, oh, well, you should know. And you're like, yeah, but your event may be different to this event. And so just so I know what you want from me, let me know, especially when it comes to money. Yeah. Oftentimes people will book you and they will say, are you free on this date? And can you do this? Can you do that? And they'll leave out the fee. And so it's really annoying, because you don't know then if there is no fee or if there is a fee, and you're just hiding it. So how do you... And therefore, when you ask that question, you don't want that first thing to be, I'm only doing it for the money. But if the money conversation isn't as fluent as the time and the date and the everything else, you have to assert yourself. You have to say, this is my price, this is what my rate is. And even if you can't match it, let's negotiate. But let not money be something that makes sure this event doesn't happen. That shouldn't be the barrier. And I don't know if within conversations with men on email, if that is what happens. I don't know. But in my experience, I do find myself having to say, oh, is there a speaking fee attached to this? If so, what is that fee? So.
And do you get that back? Do you get that from other people when you're kind of like interacting with them and you're asking them to come and speak? Is there a kind of assertiveness, like, is there an etiquette in the radio kind of world? Yeah,
totally. Radio and outside of radio, I think if you are just upfront, the conversation and the vibe that you have with the person doing the event is much more, it's transparent, it's clear. If someone says, oh, there's no budget for this, but we'll cover expenses, cool. Like, I know what page we're on. But if, for example, I've been in an event where someone else has said, oh, I got paid for that. And I'm like, how, Sway? Like, I didn't... What do you mean? How did you get paid and I didn't get paid for that? And so even in who gets paid and what they get paid, I think as a woman sometimes it makes me, when I'm hosting my own event and booking people, I'm saying, actually, I will cover your expense and I will cover your travel. And if I've got anything left, I will cover for your time. Because I know when I get booked for events, that's what I appreciate. And so, yeah, if you're doing events and you don't have budget or you do have budget, put it in the same email, in the same one that you say, oh, are you available for this event? It would be great to have you down.
Sure. And do you find that the interaction between women and men, having that conversation is very different? Like, your assertiveness comes over as you get strange responses from men because they're not used to being spoken to that way, or? Yeah, totally. Sometimes you will send an email and it's almost like, oh, obviously you would get paid. And I'm like, well, it wasn't obvious, was it? Because it wasn't in the email. So, but actually, it's really interesting. When I see people negotiate contracts between men and men, money is on the table up front. There is no question about it. Of course there's money on the table. And so as a woman, when you're having these conversations, it's almost like, well, why isn't it also the same for me? Why do I have to then ask a second question to get that from you? And I'm not just saying it being about money. It may just be about power and that dynamic. But even being at KISS, I'll tell you straight up. Is this being recorded, by the way? It is being recorded.
It is being recorded. Okay, well, that's fine. They should know.
We can edit though.
No, don't edit this. I just know that there are male colleagues doing the same job as me where I'm getting paid less. So that is still something in big 2019 that I'm aware of, and for whatever reason, it's not good enough. Everyone, if you're doing the same job, you should be getting paid the same rate. And to know from the grapevine that I'm not, I think hurts more. If I just knew it up front and I opted into that, that's cool. But I do think that's still a problem, and it is one because I'm experiencing it.
Thanks for sharing that. And Heather, challenges that you've experienced and anything to add to what Swarzy said?
Well, very similar as well, actually. I've had these same kind of similar experiences. I've been told by managers that I should be asking for more money. After we agreed what I was being paid, and then they said, yeah, you should be asking for more. And I was like, okay, thanks for telling me this side of that conversation. But I think that, yeah, being confident actually is a bit... I've found that more female colleagues seem to struggle with confidence than male colleagues. And I think that makes a massive difference, because you walk into a room and you tell everyone you know everything. Whether you know it or not, people will believe that you know it. And if you walk into a room and you want people to tell you that you know stuff and that you're really good, actually, which is maybe the way that I've seen a lot more women work. They want to be told that they're doing well rather than telling everyone else that they're doing well. It is harder. And I've seen men who walk around as if they own the place and know everything, make loads of mistakes and still get tons of opportunities because they walk around as if they know everything. So I think that's a really long process. I think it's, I grew up in the 90s. I watched a few films recently that I watched when I was very young, and I see things that I've seen then. I think, I'm still living out those things that are 20 years old, maybe. And so these things take a really long time to change.
And so if you were speaking to yourself before you went into the creative industries, or you were speaking to someone in that position now, what would the key piece of advice be to that person?
Well, actually, the advice doesn't flow from what I last said.
That's fine.
Great.
That's fine.
Yeah, this is not... I think the way that... we have so many different platforms where we can upload our own stuff now. If you really wanted to get into the creative industries, I think the best way of doing it now is to start doing whatever you really want to do. It's really easy. You want to start doing a radio show, make your own radio show, buy a small dictaphone, with £100, make your own radio show in your bedroom, put it up on Mixcloud, and then start putting it on social media. It's so much easier now. And that is actually how people find people these days. So you look at a lot of the Radio 1 presenters, a lot of them are people who are on YouTube with thousands and thousands of subscribers, and it's because they already have massive followings that they're doing it. On the other hand, if you make your own radio show and you don't get loads of followers and no one likes it, that's why you need to be doing it for the love of as well. Or if you want to be really successful, be adaptable so that you can find out what the other people want and then start making it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of feeling your way forward there. Just at the end of your as you go out and you get feedback from other people, that's kind of shaping what it is that you're cut out to do and
and you want the feedback from the right people as well.
Oh,
so,
okay, that's interesting.
If my mum tells me she loves all of my shows,
I'm sure she does.
Which
by the
she
way.
does.
Yeah.
That's really nice feedback, Mum. But you're not the commissioner. You're not the person that I want to, buy my next program or employ for the next thing. So it's also taking those things on board. And also, I think it's a process, right? So I still listen back to all of my radio shows that I do. As soon as I upload it to Mixcloud. So what we do at Nettle is you do your live show and then you can upload it to Mixcloud. And then I listen to it on the way home. And it's tough because every time I think, I wish I did that differently. I wish I did that differently. But it's a long process, and you have to kind of be optimistic and always wanting to improve, just in sort of all jobs, but also not beat yourself up because people make mistakes all the time.
So we've talked a bit about your experiences, and you started saying you've seen this happen in other people's experiences, other women that you've been speaking to. Are there any kind of patterns that you can see developing amongst women's experiences in these industries? And maybe in a moment we'll talk about some of the solutions that the industry is bringing in, and where do you see where is the root of the problem, and where do you see the industry starting to meet that problem?
So I don't know if I'm meant to share the story a bit later on, but I think it's fitting here. So I got called up to do breakfast cover. So Kiss Breakfast, Ricky, Melvin and Charlie, we've lost them to Radio 1. They're over at Radio 1 at the moment. But so cover was available. And to get Kiss Breakfast cover, given I don't know nothing about radio, I've literally walked in on for competition. They were like, yeah, Swaz, can you come through? Can you cover? I said, I would love to do it. And so there's another guy at KISS called Alex. He's my homie, he's my guy. I love Alex to pieces. And we're sitting in this room with the head producer, with the head of KISS, and we're going to go through what the week is going to look like, what time you need to get there, all the rest of it. And when I walked in and sat down, the main boss said, right, Swarzy, Alex is going to lead the show. He's going to make all the jokes. We just need you to be the girl and need you to giggle. And I was like, you know, sometimes, yeah, you think you're so ready for these conversations, and when it happens, you're just out here flagging. You're like, wow, okay. And what, you know, something that Martin Luther King said that will always resonate with me. He said, yeah, we'll have to repent over the wrongdoing of people, of bad people, but we'll also have to repent over the silence for good people. And, you know, the people in the room, they're not bad people. They're my friends. Like, we work together, we're cool. But I wish someone had just spoken up and said, she's more than a girl, you know. She's more than a giggler. She can do more than that. And so sitting in that meeting, of course, my head was already at the beginning, and I kind of just lost a bit of focus. And by the end of the meeting, and when we started the breakfast show, they all said, don't worry, Swarzy, you won't be able to just sit there and giggle. We're going to give you the show, give you the lead. And Alex was great, and he led. But something that I will say on that, I needed Alex to lead. I needed his leadership. I had never done KISS Breakfast before. It wasn't that I wanted to undermine him. I needed to see him in action. I needed to take pointers from him. But best believe I battered him up, you know. Like, when he started making jokes, when he started talking about Fortnite, when he started talking about Game of Thrones, I was right there with him. Like, I needed to be ahead of him. I needed to be right there. Because if I didn't, I would just be giggling. And what am I on KISS Breakfast giggling for? Like, 2019, no. So, and the show did really well. We had listeners, we had people on Twitter saying, these guys are good, we want them back again. And so, I just think it wouldn't have been loving to be like, I can't just be a girl and giggle in that initial meeting. I needed to prove myself. And whether or not that is right, actually, in the climate that we live in, that's what I'm going to have to do. So let me prove it. Let me prove to you I'm a good radio presenter and I can do just what Alex does. And so when we're together, the chemistry, the vibe, we can bring that to the KISS Breakfast show. And by the end of it, we get booked all the time to do breakfast cover. And so I just think in a world where, as a woman, you are always aware of being the one. If you listen to a lot of radio presenters, and I'm not firing shots, my eyes are closed, but there's a lot of girls who are giggling. And it shows to me, if you have you look at radio now, the male and female duo, the male will lead. It's often the man who will start. You will hear something like, so we've been on the timeline recently, you know, and then the girl is expected to fill in the gaps, sort of. And that's okay, but then let me also say, oh, I was on the timeline recently, and I saw da-da-da, and then Alex can come in. The producer we have at KISS is brilliant at saying, oh, Alex, you've been doing that a bit too much, you know, Swarzy, it's your turn. And whatever role you play at work, we all must be conscious of we all must be conscious of the balance. As long as everyone is conscious of that, in that room, I hope that another girl won't sit there and have to be told, just be the girl and giggle.
And can you see the industry starting to meet that challenge, like with the Tony Hall's announcement of more representation and the 50-50 initiative? Is that helping solve those problems, or?
Yeah, someone said to me at work, someone said, oh, it's a great time to be a black woman, isn't it, Swarzy? And I was like, well, it's a better time than any other time, so, well, you know, and I just think, like, the power dynamics is very strange. So I'll get called to do a lot of talks at work, or not just radio, just outside, in whatever sphere I'm hosting or presenting in. And they genuinely want to know, what is your experience as someone of mixed heritage in this world of finance, in this world of property, of this? If anyone's from TV and wanting to get into that, the best thing I've learned is that the industry is predominantly controlled by white men above their 40s. And so there's a huge gap at the moment between the ages of 25 and I'd say 40. They just don't know what you think. They don't even know if you know what Brexit is. They're just like, oh, you have something to say? Here's the mic. So there's a real gap there. And if you can feel that, let me feel it. Like, if that's what you're calling in for my experience, then it's valuable to you, clearly. But I find sometimes when you then offer your experience, they want to change it in a way that is digestible to the audience. Well, then you don't want my experience. You want the gems of my experience fused with your template, and you want it to fit into the gaps. But that's not true. And so, yeah, I do feel like as much as there's representation, we must listen to the narrative and match. Is that story true of that person. Because if it's not, then something has happened along the way. And you see that with things like, I got asked to do something for the BBC, and it was in Shoreditch, and I said straight away, I don't want to be filmed against any graffiti background, thank you. And they said, oh, that isn't quite what the company's looking for. I said, well, they must be looking for another host then. And I think you have to be very clear-cut, because the minute you see a woman who is not white against graffiti, it sends the wrong message, regardless of what the content is about. And so knowing, again, why would a man at 40 be thinking of that? He needs the 26-year-old to tell him that. And if he's not willing to listen, then you do have to walk away, because it's not helpful to the narrative. And so, yeah, as much as I love representation and I love it, I just always wonder, we must tell the story truthfully, regardless of what platform that's on.
And that's really, that's connected to what you were saying earlier, right, about the skill of listening. Like, if that is not in place, then that's not just going to mean that you're not kind of like doing a good job in terms of like sitting opposite the person next to you in a professional environment, but also just in life. Like, if you stop listening to people and wanting to garner their, the gems of their experience, it just has loads of problems. Just want to move on to the label of feminism, and you guys obviously identify as Christians, and there's also this label out there in this topic of feminism. Is that a label that you think is helpful and useful, and something that you would identify as a feminist?
I definitely think I'm a feminist. I'm very happy about being a feminist. I think we should all be feminists. There's a book called We Should All Be Feminists. I haven't read it, but I gave it to a man to read. But no, of course, I think we all should be feminists. Feminists believe that men and women are equal. Does anyone here believe that men and women aren't equal? Put your hand up. This is great, so we're all feminists.
That's great. They've all read the book.
No, I'm completely comfortable saying that. I think some people are scared of the term. They shouldn't be. I mean, all terms hold different, have different connotations, don't they? But I would say that primarily, I'm not a feminist first. I'm a Christian first, and then I'm a feminist. It's not to say that Christianity comes first, and then women and equality comes afterwards. Not at all, because that's not what it's about. And actually, God loves women just as much as he loves men. So I feel very comfortable with it.
So totally compatible, you would say. Yeah. Okay. Swarzy, to come back to you, I just want to touch on your volunteering roles, because this kind of like multiple identities, right? Being a woman in media, being a Christian woman, that seemed to come to a head a little bit at when you started to get involved with the Grenfell volunteering on the ground around the tragedy. Could you just tell us a bit about how something like those different identities interplayed in what happens, and how that works out for you?
Yeah, sure. So Grenfell happened on June the 14th, 2 years ago. And I remember waking up, like many of us did, to this horror story on the news of a tower block just on fire. And it wasn't clear at the beginning of where that tower block was. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what am I watching right now? Is that East London, North London? Where is that? So, I go to Brixton local church, and I became a Christian when I was 14. Don't have Christian background at all. My mum and dad are not Christians. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, that's people in there. That's a tower block of people, of families, of men and women, boys and girls. That Wednesday, the following Friday, KISS, who are owned by Bauer, had an award ceremony. So all week I'd been wrestling with not wrestling, I love Nikki, she did me good. She got me a ticket to go to the Bauer Awards, so it was like a big conference. And I didn't think of it at the time that, I'd be volunteering, and it meant I couldn't go to the Bauer Awards because I felt so convicted to be sitting in a plush auditorium when down the road people were really suffering. And if you remember that year, the elections were on June the 8th, and again, KISS got a big message. I didn't even know this was a thing. It was like, don't disclose any of your political views. If you do, you will lose your job. And that was June the 8th. So by the time Grenfell happened on June the 14th, I can't even do the maths, that's like 6 days, I was like, wow, Swaz, this could actually tie up your job right now because this looks political, right? But nonetheless, regardless of whoever you were, people came down, and it was the most beautiful witness of what happens when people are heartbroken by tragedy. People came out of their houses, people came up and down the UK to love and serve those who were grieving. And I remember going down, and I remember being in a minivan, like loads of people had, and it was only because we had a gold pass to say that we were friends by the church outside of the tower block that the police let us through, the fire brigades let us through, and when we pitched up, the Sikh community were there serving curry and rice. Another church lot had come down, the mosque, because it was Ramadan at the time, had opened up, and so you had every faith group you could possibly think of out on the streets. And I tell you what, it didn't matter if someone was of one group that was different to you, everyone had the same job, to love and serve those who were hurting right now. And so I hear the word feminist, and I hear the word Muslim, and I hear all those words, but I tell you, in the midst of tragedy, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You actually get told, oh, you're a taxi driver, oh, you're a mum, oh, you are a teacher, oh, you can do this, you can do that. What you are titled is more so of how helpful you can be and what gifting you have that can come to the forefront. And so, yeah, for Grenfell, it shocked me to think, am I a radio presenter or am I a human first? And even as a Christian, you know, as someone who holds the word feminism, I just think, actually before even that, in Genesis 1:27, it says that male and female, man and women, we're created in the image of God. And so therefore, your human rights has to be based on that. It has to be based on the fact that people are made in the image of God and therefore have value and dignity and respect. And the minute anything conflicts with that, whether that be their money situation, their heritage, their background, no, that doesn't rob anyone of their dignity, of their value, of their respect. And so as a Christian, I was like, well, if I believe this, it demands me to go down, no? It demands me to say, okay, pause KISS, pause BBC, pause everything. People are in need right now. And so, yeah, I feared going into work the next week thinking, I'm really sorry, guys, but I've been on the BBC to say that the Conservatives right now aren't really doing much, and they need to free up storage because we've got all of these donations and we don't have anywhere to put them. And you know what? The week before, I don't know if this is true, but in my head it's true. The week before, KISS had like MTV on the screens and music channels. The week after, they had BBC One. And I just think, God, if you are so kind to draw attention to those in our... Because how many people in Grenfell would have listened to KISS? Realistically, everyone. And so I think everyone then has a role or a connection at least to say, okay, let's just take the moment to recognize something horrible has happened rather than just continuing as normal. And when I saw BBC One, I thought, I don't know who has the remote control, but they have definitely switched on to think, there's much more to be talking about than, just emails and follow line about work, because people are in need and people have died. And regardless of whatever you believe, that's a tragedy.
Thank you for sharing that, and just absolutely beautiful, just thinking about the response because of people's dignity in the moment, yeah. So I'm aware that there will be different people here coming from no religious backgrounds, multiple religious backgrounds, and we're throwing out this term Christian. Just what does that mean, and what does it mean to you? I don't know, Heather, what does it mean to be a Christian?
To be a Christian, I believe that Jesus died and rose from the dead. I believe that God made us and created us because he wanted to know us. I'm kind of going around the different direction here. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. So God made us because he wanted to know us. That we didn't want to know him, and then we couldn't know him because of turning our backs on him. But he wanted to know us so much that he sent his son, who was part himself. You know, he killed himself to know us, right? So I believe that, but I don't only believe that. I actually, that is how I live my life, and I want God to be the person who tells me who's my number one. So that's what it means to me. And the reason that I'm a Christian, I've thought about why am I a Christian? Well, it's because I believe that it's true intellectually. It totally makes sense. I made some notes so that I could, because I have some really good notes on this that I thought that I made.
That's a really nice notepad as well.
Thanks. Thank you. Product placement. The manuscripts are surprisingly reliable. There are 24,000 writings that contribute to the New Testament. Do you like the facts? I've got more. The earliest copy dates back to 125 AD and was written over 20 to 50 years between. But look, the stats are so good.
Okay.
You wouldn't believe how good they are. I mean, you don't believe it until you look into it. So I looked into it because I didn't want to be scared that I was wrong because none of it made sense. And I looked at it and realized that it made more sense than all of the other stuff. So it's surprisingly, all of this stuff is surprisingly reliable and actually really does stand up. So, if you can look into it and not be terrified that we're going to, So I'd recommend that. If you want, you can read the rest of my notes later.
We're selling her notebooks at the bookstall at the end of this evening. I just need to go and photocopy a lot of copies of that.
There's, and one of the points, I think, is that this is one of the things I really like. When Jesus rises from the dead in the Bible, some of the first people in Matthew that he appears to are women. And at the time, women's testimonies were not admissible in court. So if women said, we saw Jesus rise from the dead in court, they wouldn't have taken it, right? So why would they have done that? Well, there are a few reasons, like God loved women. Also, we can trust it, because if they were writing that to try and persuade people that it happened and it didn't, they would never have put women there. So I love this because of many of those, because of some of those reasons. And then also, I just love God because I think he's wonderful and I think he's lovely, and he is so he appears to, do we know Moses? Moses is an old guy in the Old Testament, and God appears to him, he shows him his back because he's so holy that he can't show him his front because he'd die, and he describes himself, and I thought, this is so cool. God describes himself. I'm going to learn what he says so that I can describe him. And what he calls himself is, he says, the Lord, gracious and compassionate, slow to, I knew I'd forget it. I knew it as soon as I said it, I'd forget it. Slow to anger and abounding in love, but he will not let the guilty go unpunished. And so we hold these two things here, that God will love us so much that he wants to know us and that he'll die to know us, but also that he is so holy that people do have to be punished because he values judgment and he values justice. So anyway, these are some of the reasons that I'm a Christian.
That's great. How many notebooks do you have? Because I think we're going to have to wrap up this interview at some point. We talked the other day at the pub, Heather, about the fact that Christianity is compelling because we believe it's true, but we also think that it's beautiful. And you've mentioned a bit about God being a relational God, and we're made in his image, so we're relational beings. Like, it's great to listen to the radio, to meet other people, to come to events like that, because we're made as relational beings. As you develop your music, and you're communicating in a you are communicating through music. How does the things that you believe about Christianity impact that? And I think we've got some tracks actually that you've brought with you to play.
Yeah, we do. It's, firstly, to answer your question, it's quite hard because there are lots of tracks where the lyrics are not things that I would necessarily agree with. I often play them anyway, but I usually choose ones that I don't disagree with too much.
Okay, that's good. Balance.
Yeah. And actually on my radio show, I often think about, one of the things I love doing is volunteering on a Christian youth camp. And I often think, if I put this link up now and one of the children from that camp clicked through and listened to it, I don't want to be playing something that's going to make them question what I think. So it does impact it in that's the sort of negative way it impacts it, right? That's cutting down on the stuff I play. But then on a positive way as well, I just mean by adding and taking away. There is so much music that has its basis in faith music, right? So we have the blues, we have most of the music that I really, really love. I don't know if anyone knows a producer called Mr. Jukes, but he used to be the lead singer of Bombay Bicycle Club. So he started doing his own project called Mr. Jukes, and he did an album called God First. And I went, zing, oh, I wonder what's going on there. So I interviewed him for my show, and I asked him, what's that all about? And he said, well, I just realized that all the best music has its roots in gospel. So anyway, actually one of these tracks I've done a little clip of so you can hear it. But there is so much great gospel music and music kind of from that faith background that is also, when you believe the words that you're singing along to or listening to, it just makes it that much more special.
Should we listen to one of those tracks now?
If you want, Pete.
I do want, yeah, I do very much. What should we play, Heather?
We could start with, Shackles, that clip.
Whoa.
So everyone knows this track. And then, have we got Hallelujah Anyway? This is so fun. So those are two tracks that are massively popular, but actually have faith messages. There's another one, You Say. Can you play You Say? This I heard in the gym, and I thought, just proves that everything is worship, isn't it? It's all idol worship. And then I realized it's actually a Christian song that happened to, that has become really popular. So do you want to play it? So that one is a lot more popular. I'd probably not play that out, but it's you probably hear it on the radio actually. Then can we have How Great Thou Art?
This is an older track, isn't it?
This one's older, yeah, and for a long time I didn't. I struggled to find Christian music or music with Christian roots that I really connected with, and this was one of the first tracks where I heard it and I just went, wow, I couldn't believe it could be this funky. That sounds so lame.
That is funky. Are you playing any of those later in your set?
No, I've got one that I will play. I've got a few that I'm going to play that are kind of gospel disco, gospel soul, gospel disco.
Nice.
They're really fun.
Looking forward to that. Yeah. Last question before we go to a break. We've talked a bit about challenges that you might face in the workplace. How does your Christian faith help you tackle those challenges? And how does it actually give you hope beyond, that we see the world around us, there's tragedy, we see the world around us, there are things that seem like there's just like really difficult problems to solve. How does Christian faith give you hope in those situations?
I think for me it'd be, people will say, oh, you're amazing, you work at KISS, oh, you're the voice of BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcast, and you're like, yeah, I am.
It's like being back in the gym for
I know, just locked in. But I think, the industry is so fickle. It's so fickle. And I'm sure, I don't know if it's the same of many other industries. So my mum works in HR in Parliament. She's got a very 9-to-5 kind of job. And she's always like, when are you going to get a real job, Swaz? And I'm like, Mum, this is my real job. But it's true because in the sense that, the creative industry is very competitive. And if you're not hot, you'll be forgotten about. And so the world says, what are you doing next? What's your next event? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And there's a sense of earning your status, earning your reputation. And the minute that is pulled from you, your identity smashes. Because there is nothing then to say, oh, it's not Swarzy from Kiss anymore. It's Swarzy from Nowhere FM. Like, if I don't have that, well, people wouldn't know you. BBC Who, like, you don't know where you are. And so for me and my faith, I think it makes a massive difference because my identity being in Christ means I haven't had to earn that. I haven't had to do many hours on radio. My performance could be awful, and yet God would still call me his own. And if I was to be awful, Kiss would not call me their own. There'd be a clear distinction there. And for my non-Christian friends who do not believe the gospel, who are at work, you can see this real race, a real raggedness to kind of climb the career ladder and put all their eggs. And you know, Jesus says an amazing thing about building your life. He says, if you build it on the rock, which is me, when the storm comes, when the winds and the waves and the floods come and it beats against your house, you will be standing because you've trusted in who I am. But if you don't do that, when the winds come, because the truth is, the winds will come regardless of what you believe, and when that comes, you will drop, you will crash with a loud bang, because you've built your house on sand, meaning you've built it on things that aren't going to hold you. And so for me, being in the media, it just allows me to separate what do I believe and who am I. First and foremost, when I saw Grenfell, I didn't go down as a radio presenter. I went down as a Christian, but also as a human who can empathize with someone else who's lost. What good would it be to be there as a radio presenter? What am I going to do? No. I'm first and foremost going to sympathize and empathize and love you who are grieving and be part of that movement that was incredible to be part of. And then secondly, it's like, okay, there's people who I work with who also know what it feels like to have family problems, to have sibling rivalries and all sorts. And so it just allows me to connect and love people well and not fear that if my job is ripped from me, my whole world will not crash and burn.
Heather, anything to add?
Yeah,
That's so encouraging. Yeah, I don't want to go out there and build my house on the rock. Yeah, I mean, that sounds great.
Yeah, I completely agree because I think certainly in our culture, so if you go to a dinner party, what do people say? Oh, what's your name? What do you do? What do you do? You know, not who are you? And actually, it's so, my career or my job or whatever is actually just what I do, but it's not who I am. And who I am is I'm a Christian. I believe that I'm saved through Jesus. And I have hope, actually. I think that's another thing. I'm not putting all this time into my career to feel like I've achieved something or proved something, because I think first, we never feel like we've done enough. You can put so many hours, make so many things. I don't think people ever say, oh yeah, I've finally done enough. And, what's the other thing?
Is it in the notebook?
It's in the... and I think that's what it is. I've got hope. I've got hope because I know who I'm living for. I know who has, I know that I've got my relationship with God, and that's the most important thing, actually. And I know that there's hope after death. If we don't have that hope, then that's why we're building our lives on our careers now. Because we don't have that hope that we're going to be with him for the rest of time.
Guys, thank you so much for your answers. We're gonna move to a break now, and we'll have. There's been so much great stuff said there that I'm sure people will have questions. So we're gonna go to a break. Then we'll hear from Rosie Woodbridge, and then we'll get an opportunity to respond to what the guys have said in a Q&A. But can we just give them a round of applause?